Turn towards the end of the Parsha, and then you have this idea. The Torah gives us the command of tzitzis. Now you'll notice that tzitzis is a fundamental. It's on Pasuk 1538, page 816. Okay, the Torah starts with this section, and it seems like it's unrelated to everything that followed. The Torah says like this on page 816. It's towards the bottom of the page, right where it looks like a new section. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe lemor. This is something we say to davening every day. Daber el bnei Yisrael ve'amarta lehem v'asulehem tzitzis. They should make tzitzis, what we call fringes. Al kanfei vigdeim ledorosam, on the corners of their garments. V'noso al tzitzis hakanaf b'sol tcheles. On the corner of the tzitzis, they should put a strand of tcheles, which is some sort of blue color. Okay. Now the first rule is when it comes to tzitzis that you are only obligated to wear tzitzis if you wear a four-cornered garment. If you're not wearing a four-cornered garment, by the letter of Torah law, you do not have to wear tzitzis. If you're wearing a regular pullover T-shirt, or you're wearing a regular garment, a regular shirt, and you're not wearing, it doesn't have four corners, you don't have to wear tzitzis. Our custom is that we obligate ourselves to fulfill this mitzvah by wearing a four-cornered garment. In other words, the thing that we call, the garment we call, put on your tzitzis. It's not really tzitzis. What you're doing is you're putting on a garment. The garment happens to be four corners, and therefore gets tzitzis, and therefore we wear it. So the tzitzis is something we obligate ourselves to do because the tzitzis is such a big mitzvah, so we obligate ourselves to put on tzitzis. You can even wear more than one pair of tzitzis if you're wearing several four-cornered garments, so then you put tzitzis on each one of them. As a matter of fact, in the yeshiva world, when guys go to play basketball, so it's a problem because if you're wearing your regular tzitzis, they get all sweaty. You don't want to wear them. And on the other hand, you don't want to play basketball without wearing tzitzis. So what they do is they'll actually wear jerseys that they pull over, and they cut them up more than halfway, because when you cut it up more than halfway, that constitutes a corner. In order to be a corner, it's got to go more than halfway up, and they actually put tzitzis on the corners, and then you have your basketball tzitzis, which is if a guy's ever got a breakaway layup, you whip him from the back with the tzitzis. It makes for a very good, you get a tzitzis foul, right? And then you get the guy. So also the possibilities are limitless. So so in the religious world, that's what they do. We force ourselves to wear tzitzis. Now, the Torah then comes along, and the Torah, pay attention very carefully. The Torah says like this: the haya lachem letzitzis, 3 lines from the bottom. Uriisa moso, you should see the tzitzis. Uzachartem es kol mitzvos Hashem, be a reminder of all of Hashem's mitzvos. If you see the tzitzis, it's a reminder of all of Hashem's mitzvahs. V'asisa mosam, you shall do them. V'losa suru acharei levavchem v'acharei nechem, it's not stray after your hearts, after your eyes, asher atam zonim acharem, which you stray after. Okay, now, what the Torah is telling you is like this. Tzitzis is the proverbial, the way we use tzitzis, this is a proverbial string around the finger reminder. I always tell you, when you want to remember something, put the string around your finger. Right? Like you wake up in the middle of the night, you got one of those great ideas, how you can make millions. You don't feel like getting out of bed. So take something, take a rubber band and put it around your finger. Right? That will be then a reminder to take that your finger starts turning blue. Right? That's not the tchelis of the tzitzis. The tzitzis we're talking about, that's not the blue in the tzitzis, but your finger. So there's an idea, if you ever want to remember something, they always said, I remember once I read in the book that you wake up in the middle of the night, we have an idea, reach over, you don't have to get out of bed, grab your pack of cigarettes, just throw it across the room. Then in the morning when you wake up, you'll see cigarettes all over the floor. You remember, why are they doing that? You remember you got up in the middle of the night and you threw them across the floor because you had an idea. Then maybe, and maybe not, you'll remember the idea. But it becomes the reminder. There's always they call it the string around the finger. So the tzitzis is a way where a Torah Jew, takes a look at his tzitzis, and that's a reminder of who I am. So let's say you're tempted to walk into a non-kosher restaurant, or you're tempted to walk into a non-kosher anything, or you're tempted to do something inappropriate. Your tzitzis serve as that last-ditch reminder that this is a conflict between who I am and what I'm about to do. Now, there is an option, which is just to rip off the tzitzis. But most people, it becomes, you might do that, depending on who you are. But for many people, there are situations in life where a person's about to do something, he takes a look at his tzitzis and says, you know what, this is just not something that I really should be involved in. It's that last-ditch savior, the thing that reminds you at all times of who you are. That's why the mitzvah is, that's why the Torah says, Uri'isam oso. The Torah says, you shall see it. That's one of the reasons, that's the main reason why we keep the tzitzis out. Why the tzitzis out in full view is because the whole idea of the tzitzis is to see them. There have been times in Jewish history where Jews did not wear their tzitzis out because of anti-Semitism what they called the Jew strings. And people nowadays were not embarrassed. Nowadays, especially in Israel, people wear their talis outside, even the big tzitzis on Shabbos, where they wear the talis, people wear it to shul all the time. There are places I've been in around the world where you don't wear your talis on the street because it makes you too obvious a sign that you're Jewish. My wife is from Columbus, Ohio. Not my fault, but that's where she's from. And in Columbus, there aren't a lot of Jews. And when I was there for the first time, so I was walking the shul in Columbus, and I'm wearing my talis outside. And in Chicago, in West Rogers Park, you could get away with it. In Israel and Yerushalayim, you certainly could do it. It's not a problem. But Columbus is just not 90% of the people in Columbus believe Elvis Presley's still alive. And that's the mentality there. The other 10% are lying, by the way. And so that's the type. It's kind of lower middle class, upper lower class America, and they haven't seen a lot of Jews. So I'm wearing my talis on the way to shul. I notice cars are driving by on Saturday morning on the way to shul. I'm walking, and it's like a main street, and these cars are driving, and people are driving by like this. They're looking at me. I think they saw the man himself got off the cross, and he's walking on the street. They didn't know what to make of it. This guy with a cape walking down the street, a black and white striped cape. So we try. There's certain places in the world where you can't do it because of anti-Semitism. On the other hand, it's certainly in Israel where you're not nervous about being identified as a Jew in most cases. There's no reason not to wear it. That's why we wear them out. We wear them out because they are meant to be a reminder. Now, on the original tzitzis, the reminder was going to have, you notice on the tzitzis, there's always one longer thread. That's when you wrap around it, there's one longer thread. On the original tzitzis, that longer thread was going to be dipped in something called cheles, which was a blue dye, which came from some sort of marine creature called a chalazon. A chalazon is gone. We have lost the tradition of what this chalazon fish is, but there is a blue dye, and that was supposed to be on the tzitzis. Now, the question becomes like this. I want you to look at Rashi for a second. The Torah says, "Velosa suru acharei levavchem ve'acharei nechem." You must not stray after your hearts and after your eyes. Now, if you look at Rashi, it's in the second column. Left column, 2 lines from the bottom. If you find it, please show the person next to you. Left column of Rashi, 2 lines from the bottom. And the Torah says, "Velosa suru acharei levavchem, kimo mitur ha'aretz." What does the word velosa suru mean? Don't stray. And the Torah says as well, it's related to the same word we saw earlier in the Parsha, which is where the spies came back from checking out the land, which is a very interesting a coincidental connection that tzitzis appears in the same parsha, uses the same word as a spy. So we'll see why the Torah does that. And then it says, Rashi says like this, Halev v'ha'inayim, the heart and the eyes, hem meraglim laguf. They are the spies or the checker outers of the body. Misarsarim lo esaveros. They're the ones who incite a person to sin. How does it work? Ha'ayin ro'a, the eye sees. V'halev chomed, the heart desires it. V'haguf osa esa averos, and then the body carries out the sin. Now, if you take a look at it, the way Rashi puts it, Rashi says the eye sees and the heart desires, right? Take a look back at the pasuk, how the pasuk puts it. The Torah puts it in terms of v'losa suru acharei levavchem ve'acharei inechem. Don't stray after your heart and after your eyes. The Torah puts it in terms of the heart first and then the eyes. Rashi explains, well, the heart sees and the eye sees and the heart desires. So Rashi flips it around. So the commentaries struggled to reconcile that, why the Torah puts it in one order, yet Rashi, quoting the oral Torah, puts it in the other order. Why is that? So human nature is such that what do we normally see? What does a person see? You see, you ever hear the expression, you see what you want to see? Right? People have very selective hearing, certainly. Certainly people have selective hearing. Just wait till you have teenage children. You'll see how selective their hearing is, right? They never hear the no. They never heard the no. Somehow they heard the whole sentence about taking the car, but they didn't hear me say, no, you can't take the car. That they never hear. They just heard, take the car. Very selective hearing. The same way they have selective hearing, people have selective vision. What is it that we see in life? You generally see what you want to see. You're looking, you want to see it, so you see it. The more a person is looking for something, the more they're going to figure out a way to find it. They spoke about one great rabbi who was practically almost legally blind. Yet when he would get an aliyah, when he would be called to the Torah for an aliyah, he was the one, sometimes when they're reading the Torah on Shabbos, sometimes they'll pick up a mistake in the Torah. He could barely see, yet he would pick up the mistake when something was miswritten. Why did he say it? Because he wants to. That's important for him to see it. Sometimes people hear all sorts of gossip. If you're really interested in the gossip, some people always know the gossip, but people never know the gossip. If you really want to hear it, one way or another, you'll figure out how to hear it, where to hear it, where to go to hear it. Same thing when it comes to vision. If you want to see it, you'll see it. If you want to avoid seeing it, if your heart desires to not see inappropriate things, you'll avoid those areas. However, Rashi flips it around because when in the individual instance, how does it work? You get on a bus or you go into a club or you go somewhere and you see something, that triggers off the desire of the heart. But essentially, you're there because the heart really wants to see it. So there's the overall picture, which is what the heart desires and the eye sees it. Then there's the individual instance, which is that when you see it, that triggers off the desire of the heart. Let's just talk about the individual. That's what Rashi's talking about. The Torah's talking about the overall picture. What you really want to see, you'll see. What you really want to hear, you'll hear. And what you see and what you hear is often an indication of where a person's, what's really going on in a person's heart. Okay? Now, the question becomes, the Torah says that you put the blue on the string. There's the tchelis that you put on the string. Anybody know why you do that? Why do you put the tchelis on the string? What's that? Yeah, that's always the best answer. The best answer is because Hashem said so. We're very religious, and God said so. No, nothing's safe for that. I was once, my kid was 3 years old, and I was going to he was doing something. He was 3 years old, my oldest son. So I said to him, do you want a patch? He was doing something he shouldn't do. I said, do you want to get a patch? So he looked at me and said, you can't patch me. I said, why not? He says, because Hashem doesn't let. All of a sudden he became religious. Hashem does all of a sudden, the kid, I don't get smart, kid. All of a sudden Hashem doesn't let. Yes, we do it because God said so. We may as well close the book and go home. God said so. That's what we're trying to understand what's behind it. You're right. You're absolutely right. We're trying to say, what do you say?
We have the chain, right? The blue reminds us of the sea, which
Good.
reminds us of the skies, which reminds us of the heavens, which is God.
Good. The blue, very good, very good. When you see the blue reminds you of the sea reminds you of the sky reminds you of God's throne. And once you're already thinking about God's throne, you realize, if I do this, I'm toast. I better stop, right? So that's more or less the progression. You're absolutely right. Now, the question becomes, that's a logical question. I mean, that's quite a chain of, blue sea, blue, until you get up to God's throne. Why not just look at it and think immediately of the sky or think immediately of the heavens? Blue, heavens. Why do you got blue to the sky, blue to the sea, to the sky, there's a chain, I forgot, that we're missing one step out of the chain. Whatever it is, why don't we go directly? Why don't we go immediately to it? The answer is the Torah is trying to communicate an idea here, and I think this is very important for everybody who's here right now. It's important for Jews all the time. The Torah is trying to communicate the idea, don't go jumping levels too quickly. We grow in life one level at a time. Go to the sea, and go to the sky, and go to the throne, and go to the divine presence, one step at a time. Sometimes people make a mistake, they're already diving into the water too quickly. Take one step at a time. Obviously, it's an idea, and obviously the idea is basically the reminder. You look at your tzitzis and don't do it. There's actually an unbelievable story related in the Talmud. A man who had found out about a woman of ill repute who took an enormous sum of money. And he spent money to get to where she was doing her business. And she was absolutely stunningly beautiful. And he arrived, and he was all ready and good to go. And the Gemara says that his tzitzis jumped up. I'm telling you what the statement of the Talmud, the tzitzis jumped up and hit him in the face. And he said to her, you know what? I changed my mind. She said to him, hold it. Why, what happened? No one has ever rejected me before. What happened? He said, well, I have this mitzvah called tzitzis, and my tzitzis got up, they hit me in the face, and therefore I can't do this, and he left. So before he left, she took his name and what yeshiva he learned in. She got his vital information. She then converted to Judaism, and she hunted down, she went to all the yeshivas, and she came to one of the yeshivas, and she said, this is a story in the Gemara. The Gemara says this. She came to the yeshiva, and she said to the Rosh Yeshiva, you have a student over here, and this is the student, this is the story, and she converted to Judaism, and the two got married, lived happily ever after. That's what the Gemara says. That's what the Gemara says. Now, I ask you a question. Do you really think, you ever see the cartoons? In the cartoons, there's like a fist, all of a sudden, like a cartoon fist that punches somebody in the face. So the Gemara says that Tzitzit jumped up and hit him in the face, right? I don't think it literally means, I don't think what the Gemara told me, it doesn't mean it jumped up and hit him in the face. I think what the Gemara means is that the Tzitzit was the last-ditch reminder, exactly what I told you earlier. He takes a look, he's about to commit one of the worst sins a person could commit, takes a look and says, listen, I can't live a contradiction. This is a contradiction. This cannot possibly be. And therefore, he took a look at the tzitzis. The tzitzis hit him, like we say, I had an idea, it hit me like a ton of bricks. There were no bricks around, and if you would have been hit by a ton of bricks, you wouldn't be around to tell me. So that didn't happen, right? That didn't happen. We're not rednecks who are playing a game with the getting hit by a truck. If it happens, most people die when that happens. So you didn't literally get hit by a ton of bricks. You didn't get literally, what it's telling you? It's telling you that becomes the last-ditch effort. And there are people who have, I knew a guy who was, a guy who was Sameach, and he told me that he was from a religious home, raised religious, and he was in a bar. He had gone off completely. He was in a bar, and he was about to get involved in something very similar to this. And all of a sudden he said to himself, what am I doing? What am I doing? And he walked out of the bar. He wasn't wearing his tzitzis in the bar, by the way. He just happened to say, what am I doing? He told me he walked out of the bar. He fasted the next day. He made a fast to atone for his sin. He put on tefillin for the first time in years, and today he's religious. And it's just interesting. You never know what will get you, what's going to get you at the last minute. There's a famous, there's actually a book that's been written by the Art Scroll, a company called Incredible, about a man named Rabbi Yossi Wallace. In English, we call Yossi Wallace. He's the head of one of the major outreach organizations in Israel, and he's the CEO. He's responsible. He has to raise about $6-7 million a year. So I was once speaking to him. He himself was an Israeli who eventually finished the Israeli army. I think he was a colonel in the Israeli army, and then he eventually moved to the United States. He was involved in the arms industry. He was making piles of money. And eventually, he moved back to Israel, and he was living in Ra'anana. Ra'anana is a more or less secular city in Israel, very high-end, secular. And one night, he had been told a story growing up. He had a grandfather. His grandfather was a rabbi in a small town in Europe. This is an unbelievable story. His grandfather was a rabbi in Europe in a small town. And towards the end of the war, his grandfather was in one of the concentration camps. Towards the end of the war, like in 1944, the German soldiers pulled all of the inmates out in full view in the camp. They called his grandfather over. His grandfather was the leading rabbi in the camp, and the guy, the commander of the camp, the commandant, pulled out a piece of bacon, and he said to his grandfather, I want you to eat this bacon in full view of all the Jews. So he says, I'm not going to eat it. So the commander pulls out a pistol, and he says, if you don't eat the bacon, I'm going to blow your brains out. He says, I'm not going to eat it. So he points out in his distance, he says, can you see, look out in the distance. He looks out, he says, do you see that dust over there? Yeah. He says, that's the dust of the Russian tanks that are coming to liberate the camp. They're going to be here in a matter of hours. In a matter of hours, you're all going free. If you don't eat this bacon, you're going to miss liberation. After being here for a couple of years, you're going to miss liberation by 3 hours. All you got to do is eat the bacon, or I'm going to kill you. Otherwise, you're going to miss liberation. Eat the bacon, you're going to go free. He says, I'm not going to eat it. He pulled out the gun and he killed him. That was a story this young man grew up with. Came to Israel, was secular, moved to the United States, moved back to Israel. So he was living in Ra'anana, very, very upscale neighborhood. And one night he was on his way home. From work, and his wife calls him up and says, listen, we don't have anything in the house, pick up some sandwiches. So he goes over to a restaurant that sold pork, and he's waiting in line to buy pork at this restaurant. And he said, he's standing there waiting in line, and all of a sudden it hit him. He said, look, my grandfather died to not eat this stuff. I'm waiting in line with a bunch of Israelis trying to buy this stuff. One of us is crazy. My grandfather and I cannot both be sane and occupy the same planet. He died for this, and I'm willing to pay for it. Now, one of us is crazy. Either he was crazy or I'm crazy. We can't both be sane. So he backed out of line, and he went to a seminar to find out all about Judaism. Eventually became about Tshuva, and he took over the entire organization. Today he's the CEO of the organization. So sometimes you never know in life what's going to be that thing that flips you and just says, you know what, 1 second, what am I doing over here? That's the whole purpose of tzitzis. On the other hand, when a person does start taking those steps, which tzitzis wake him up to, you have to be careful. Don't jump too fast. Don't jump too fast. Take it one step at a time. It's a balanced religion. Take it one step at a time. Okay. That is that's all I want to say about the tzitzit. Yes, please. Good question. The question is, doesn't he have to eat it in order to save his life? It's not one of the 3 cardinal sins. In other words, the halacha is that a Jew has to give up his life not to worship idols, commit adultery, or murder. On the other hand, any other avera, if an anti-Semite pulls out a gun and says, "Jew, eat this piece of pork or eat a non-kosher burger," so then your reaction is, could I have the ketchup? Pass the ketchup, and you go in here with a side order of fries. Whatever you have to do to stay alive. That's absolutely true. However, there is an asterisk. There is if it is in front of other Jews, there are 10 other Jews, which makes it a chil Hashem, it's a desecration of God, then the Jew has to give up his life for anything, for even the slightest of error. If it's in front of 10 other Jews, or if there is the anti-Semite is doing it in order, let's say it's a time of religious persecution. If it's specific, organized religious persecution, see, it's not clear about the Holocaust. The truth is, it's not clear if the Holocaust was religious persecution or Jewish persecution. It's a big difference. Religious persecution is we're trying to get Jews to sin. Jewish persecution is just we're trying to kill Jews. Because a Jew, for example, in the time of, let's say, the Spanish Inquisition, if you renounce Judaism, you could stay alive. In the time of the Holocaust, renouncing Judaism didn't help you. If you were Jewish, even as they even they killed people who were not Jewish, who they felt were Jewish, even though they were not halachically Jewish. And by the way, the argument that nowadays that some people make the argument where the Orthodox maintain a certain standard of how to become Jewish, it has to be an Orthodox conversion and so on and so forth. You'll often get the argument from people that say, well, Hitler considered me Jewish. It's very dramatic, but Hitler wasn't a posek. And we don't determine Judaism based on Hitler's standards. We determine Judaism based on Jewish standards. We can't be blamed based on what Hitler did or did not do. That doesn't determine. So what? It's very dramatic. It sounds great, but it doesn't mean a thing as far as the halacha is concerned. Okay, but there you're talking about where it's in public, then you have to give up your life. That's what the halacha says. Good question.